I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast, and this is breaking news on the Pittsburgh Steelers front. The team has now signed Brian Flores to be their linebacker coach slash senior defensive assistant. This is a huge move. Of course, Flores, most recently being the Miami Dolphins head coach, is now suing the league for racial discrimination in their head coaching hiring practices in how they've treated primarily black head coaching prospects or coaches at all in the league. This is a huge development. One, Flores is a very experienced coach. He worked under Belichick for over a decade with the New England Patriots. He was their linebackers coach, a special teams coach, a safeties coach. He has a ton of experience. But two, he comes to the team now to work with Devin Bush and at the linebacker position, a group that the Steelers need to see significant improvement over this year. And he brings a ton of experience as a head coach. On top of that, you have maybe the Minkah Fitzpatrick narrative. Of course, Flores was the head coach for the Miami Dolphins when Minkah Fitzpatrick was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there were some rifts about how things weren't comfortable between the two. How will that play out by the Pittsburgh Steelers? But the point that I think can't be overlooked or can't be overstated how important this is that Art Rooney II, in making this move to agree to this hire, this is the NFL being sued by this man and alleging racial discrimination in hiring practices and what the NFL has done for years to potential black NFL head coaches and to even black head coaches who were hired but not put in a position where they were given much of a chance to succeed or they were expected not to succeed. This is a very interesting move by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and to put them in the forefront and say, hey, we're backing this guy, saying this is a guy who's suing the league. Guess what? We still think that he's a credible coach and we're standing behind him. Mike Tomlin released a statement saying, I'm excited about Brian Flores joining our coaching staff, given his history of developing and teaching defensive players during his time in the NFL. Brian's resume speaks for himself. I look forward to him adding his expertise to helping our team. This is a huge move for the Pittsburgh Steelers, bold in every way. One, getting a huge name to add to the coaching staff, dispelling the myth, by the way, they're saying that Mike Tomlin doesn't want to work with experienced coaches or doesn't look for talented coaches or ones that are highly respected. This is a guy who was highly respected across the NFL. And even with his situation, this was a guy that a lot of people said, that's a good football mind. You wonder if it's going to get lost, but it's also bold because maybe people thought it was lost. People thought by him suing, and Brian Flores even said himself, if he doesn't get another job in the NFL, he still wants to do this because he thinks it's important. But huge for the Steelers to make this move and say, you know what, we're going to be the team that brings this guy back in. And also huge, there's no overlooking, the Rooney Rule, the legacy of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They hired the first ever black assistant coach in the NFL's history in Lowell Perry. Mike Tomlin worked under Tony Dungy, who got his start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Tony Dungy was the first ever black NFL head coach to win the Super Bowl. Of course, the second is Mike Tomlin, who is still the Steelers head coach. There's a lot of, I think, historical relevance to this move, on top of potential for Flores to put his fingerprints on and maybe significantly help this Steelers defense that is being crafted to be the next group that could carry this franchise moving forward. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. This has been an emergency YouTube episode that we had to get up. It's short, to the point, but I want to explore this conversation a lot more. We want to see what else gets said. Joining me on Monday's episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast, we'll talk about this in much more depth, will be Mark Kaboly of The Athletic. We'll have an interesting conversation about this. We'll also be having our Mock Draft Monday contest. Should be a very exciting episode. Be sure to tune in wherever we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Be back on your screens and in your ears very soon.